Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Fire Analytics meeting. So we have a few notes here, so we can do some housekeeping, conference prep, see how that's going, and project docs to make this an official HL7 project. And anything from you guys additionally?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Nope. All right. Well, might be shorter than normal. I guess Nikolai is busy with fire camp, which sounds like fun. I know we're all wishing we were there. All right. Yeah, housekeeping. I don't think we have a lot to go through. Nikolai's working on spec. And we still have this Rust collaboration going at some point. We'll see. Steve, I don't know if you've reached out or checked out any more things. I know we're doing a little bit more with Rust, so it's still an interesting initiative from us.
Yeah, I've just been busy. It would be interesting to see where other people want to go. At the same time, we're happy to continue in the direction where we've been. So I think it'd be interesting just to pick other people's brains at some point.
Yeah, I'll ping Brian about it again and see what his temperature is. I know he's been working on our tooling as well. So, but that's public, so you should be able to see it as it evolves.
Yeah, I poked in there a few weeks ago when you first sent it to me, but I haven't checked it out since.
Yeah, okay. I know I'm exploring some Rust. I haven't written any or really looked at too much code, but I'm curious. Oh, I was on the hook to revise the intro page, which I completely forgot about. So that's something I'm gonna have to take on. Maybe I'll work on it this next week. Should be possible. What else we got here? That's it for housekeeping. I don't know if you guys have any housekeeping items you want to raise.
2 items are done. I put us out there on the test matrix, and I sent you the
Oh, yep.
title. So those items are complete.
Yeah, I will. I'm fine with your revisions. Thanks for giving me the context there. So I'll make that change.
Great, thanks.
Cool.
Oh, cool. I just noticed that.
Yep. So we'll
Nice one,
be
Steve.
yeah. I'm excited for it. More Rust. Rust in the future. John, any of your to-dos that we can get rid of from your very long list here?
Possibly. Let me just bring it up.
Yeah, I've got the link.
So sadly, the repeat thing is still going, but I am making incremental progress on it. Where am I? Okay. Draft PSS we'll talk about today. Code system with child concepts example to repeat directive. I have incorporated into that task. So I'll do that all at the same time. Row index pull request is still to do. Mimic for example. So I think this is the full mimic derived views project, I think. So this is
Hmm.
I interpret this as beyond what I've already done, which is like a kind of significant SQL on firework example, but it's not the whole mimic derived views thing. So I would say that that's still to do. Parquet example with flat quack is still to do. Use case examples of multiple view definitions. I think this is for the API. How do we use multiple view definitions together with the API? I think this is still open in my mind because I don't really know it off the top of my head. Maybe you guys have had to think about this, but did we I know that we had the library thing, but I'm not sure how that filtered into the actual API, as in you can use it with the API.
What do you mean, John? Yeah. Are you saying we would enhance view definitions to support or have the run? I'm just thinking of the run API would be able to run multiple view definitions at the same time.
Yeah, where this came from was that we were talking about, okay, here's an API, you can run an individual view definition, but you almost always need multiple view definitions to do anything non-trivial, right? And you also want like a consistent view of those multiple view definitions. So you want them all exported at the same point in time and all the rest of it. So like, how do you do that? And then I think when we were talking about that, we hadn't really progressed the conversation about the library and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not sure if we came back to this, but yeah, I think that's what that was about.
Yeah, can you recall if it was what was at all that I wrote in there? Do you remember like where is that? Like in the API request itself? Was that where that was living? I can't remember.
I'm not sure what the at all was, Arjun. That might be buried
Okay.
away in your brain somewhere.
I don't know. I have to go back, look and circle back. Nikolai might remember, to be honest.
But do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, how do we kind of like say if I wanted to, execute all the different view definitions that are the dependencies for my use case, how do I do that in a consistent way? Considering that the data in that server could be changing, so it might not be good enough to sort of say export patient and then 2 minutes later
Right.
export condition or something.
I haven't really thought about this. I mean, it gets into transaction semantics and stuff. Yeah, maybe we'll bring it up with Nikolai next time. If he's given some thought to the ability to export multiple view definitions at once, how that might be encoded into the request, or what the expectations are. Yeah, I'm totally blanking if we had this conversation in the past, to be honest, like, and where we got to.
Yeah, so I think that is still a valid thing to talk about. The next one I think is also still a valid thing to talk about, which incorporates a number of things. To take the last one first, one of them is, how do you ask a server, how many of these patients or some other entity do you have that are meeting this criteria before you go and execute the query? And the other ones are kind of similar. They're like, are you capable of executing this query at all? Considering that there may be different levels of capability in servers. For example, there might be certain functions that aren't implemented by one server or another. And yeah, so I'm not sure if I care as much about the dry run pre-flight. That one was raised by Graham actually, and I think he had something that specific to the IG publisher that was related to that I can't quite grasp right now. The one that I do care about is the kind of counting cohorts use case, which I don't know if we have a really good answer for. In fact, I think one answer I think is just the FHIR path search parameter, and where does this live, and is this actually something that is feasible for servers that are implementing SQL on FHIR anyway? Like, can you just implement a FHIR path search parameter using the infrastructure that you've already built for executing view definitions to allow people to use that to count and retrieve actual records? Or is there some feature of the SQL FHIR API operations that's missing, or how does somebody do this? So that's kind of without taking too much more time on that.
Yeah, I think we probably, Steve, jump in as well, but need to put some more thought work behind it. And the idea is, yeah. So the thing is, like, in my mind, the question is, how is this different from a query, right? Like, I mean, it is a query. So given a query resource, is it useful to have some other API capability to do this? Maybe I'm missing the point completely.
Yeah, so that's one possible answer, is if you have the ability to run arbitrary SQL queries, can you just use that in conjunction with view definitions to count things? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, as an approach, because in terms of like, would you add to an API for, it's not a totally specific use case in my mind, but it's getting there, and it's definitely query side, right? So yeah, I think maybe a broader discussion about this, different types of approaches. I mean, it gets at a little bit of API design philosophy, right? Like how specific do you make your API towards use cases, right? Because all the optionality of your API is not going to be used by everyone, of course. Like everything is not, like there's just levels of how specific and generic the use cases are and how that's reflected in the API. So yeah, I think as we probably just need to flesh out the query side more, and maybe that will be a helpful driver of how to think about this vis-a-vis the
Yeah,
API.
I think it's pretty common, pretty fundamental. I think it's going to become more obvious once we start building things over the top of this API, which we haven't quite got to yet. But yeah, I think it's just leave it on the list for now.
Yeah, fair. I'm not saying it's one way or the other for sure. And it's also like possible versus convenient, right? Like, APIs are just they're tools, right? For use cases rather than, some kind of dogmatic top-down
Yeah,
idea, right? So, okay, let's table this and maybe do some work on some of the other things. We can let it percolate a little bit. And then as we move forward, particularly on the query side and implementation side, I think we'll have more clarity.
cool.
Cool. Okay. So that was housekeeping for me. Yeah, I think I talked about my stuff. All right, let's switch over to conference prep. I think it's gone pretty well. We only have a couple of, I think, outstanding topics and descriptions that we need, like one or two, but we probably are close. I asked Daniil the other day, but he hasn't got back to me. Just next steps, can we switch over to the marketing side of the house? He's
Sure.
already done a bunch of work. So like LinkedIn graphics and that sort of thing. So I think we're in relatively good shape. He can update the website really fast. So if we need to make any modifications, I haven't spoken to everyone thus far. There's one or two people I haven't spoken to. So, I mean, definitely some people are going to need more work and time to work on their presentations. I mean, it's late October. So what is it like? We've got about 6 weeks thereabouts, 5 to 6 weeks. So it is kind of getting closer to the time. So we definitely want to kick off at least the marketing side and then start working with people on their presentations if they so need it. I think I'm going to do a new version of my presentation, which has gotten a little stale probably. So I'll be working on that next couple of weeks. Any questions or comments on the conference? Okay. So you guys, yeah, go ahead, John.
What's the date?
Good question. I actually don't know off the top of my head. I think it's the December 4th and 5th, but I'm going to confirm that right now. It's that Thursday, Friday of the first week of December. So yes, Thursday, December 4th and Friday, December 5th. You're welcome to, so Steve, both you and Steve are scheduled for the 4th, 10:30 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern. If those times don't work for you or that day doesn't work for you, let me know. I mean, we can totally move things around.
I think it should be fine.
Okay. Good for you too, Steve?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Make you green. So let's see here. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, so I'll continue to move forward on the marketing side with Daniil. And I think we're in pretty good shape. So dates, topic, we'll update the website, we'll distribute the templates in the next couple of days. I'm pretty sure they're all done. And then start marketing. Okay, cool. Great.
Sounds good. Thanks for your work on that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a lot easier the second time around, by the way. All right, next up, we have Project Docs review. I don't know what to call it, but project, should say HL7 Project Docs. I don't know what to call it, but cool. So, yep, John, thank you for putting those together. They looked good to me. Appreciated the examples too. I looked them over. Yeah, the only comment I had was I think we incorporate API and query resource like that, like V2.1 is what we want to ballot. And yeah, that's the only comment. So I don't know if other folks took a look at it yet, but we can ping people. And then I guess, I don't know what the procedure is, but I guess we just go and post it up. I guess we might need to nail down like actual participants. And some people have left and some people have joined, I guess. So maybe I'll reform what the participant group is, because you need what Gino was telling us, right? You need the co-chair, but you also need, what else do you need actually? Let's look at those docs for a second. I don't know if you
I'm not sure
looked into
that you
that.
did need a whole lot. Well, there's probably things like so I don't think it actually changes a whole lot for the parts of the process that are not formal, if that makes sense. So there's formal touch points, like when we initiate the project in the first instance, when we ballot things, and when we make certain decisions and all that sort of thing. But I think a lot of what we usually do can kind of keep going in a similar way to what it is right now.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only I just meant really specifically in the PSS, like
oh yeah,
whose names
we'll,
names do we put in the PSS basically?
yeah, we can figure that out. And if that's a dynamic thing anyway over the coming years or whatever, like I'm not sure how that all gets managed, but yeah, I think with the what do we ballot? I think we also need additional guidance as well on that, because there's like quite lengthy sort of lead times and deadlines on these things. So say if we wanted to ballot in like May next year or whatever, I think we've already kind of technically gone past the documented deadline for that. I think that that's been extended to like November or something, I think Gino was saying. But yeah, so I wasn't sure whether we were, balloting version 2 and 2.1, or like just coming up with a new thing to ballot, or I don't really think. And then the other question in my mind is, what is an R2 or an R, like is this actually R1 from HL7's perspective? Do we kind of have to like map what our thing is to something in terms of like its HL7 life cycle and all this sort of thing? So I think we just wait till Gino comes back and we have those conversations, because I don't really understand all the ins and outs of it. But I did have a look at the process for initiating a project, and there's a page there. I'll just send you the link that contains. You can have a look at all the projects, the ones that have been accepted, the ones that are still in draft, and you can get an idea. So I think the way it works is you first have a proposal, and FHIR kind of votes on whether it's going to go ahead like at all beyond proposal stage. And if you get past that, then you progress to this project scope statement stage, which is just a slightly more detailed thing. So I went ahead and kind of drafted out both of those things. And then it kind of becomes like a sub-project of FHIR. And you can see if you go to the FHIR webpage, there are a number of sort of sub-projects already. Let me just send you that link.
Yeah, can you get the?
I should just share my screen actually. So yeah, if you go to the FHIR workgroup page, you can see that these are kind of the active sub-projects that have kind of regular meetings ongoing. So I imagine that we will become one of those. So and therefore we will kind of advertise our meeting slot. It will go into the HL7 calendar. We'll potentially move to the HL7 Zoom, and we'll have to familiarize ourselves with HL7 procedures to some extent. But I expect that, and we'll also need to have like a formal minutes and all that sort of thing.
Right.
So yeah, I think there'll be a few changes, but I don't think it will be revolutionary to the way that we do our stuff. It's just that we will change a little bit on those touch points, and I feel like it will be a positive thing overall at this stage.
Guys, I gotta jump. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah,
Thanks.
See ya.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my take as well. There's going to be a little bit more bureaucratic overhead, but not too much. We just have to follow the procedures, but they're not too onerous. And I don't know if you are on any calls, HL7 calls on a regular basis, John, but we have to understand the procedures and meet them. And mostly, I think it's just like documenting in the right place. Once we get the habit of like taking a little bit more formal minutes, but it doesn't seem like an excessive increase in workload. But yeah, I think I don't see any huge blockers. Maybe we just list out what the to-dos are moving forward. So I would say I guess Gino is in Portugal, so he might be out for a couple days. But let's say next week we just make sure that we at least get Gino's eyes on the proposal in PSS.
I
Okay.
think Gino's like involvement in this is like a critical success factor.
True.
I probably need to familiarize myself with this and probably go along to one or two of these FHIR meetings and just get a feel for it and help shepherd this process through. I was just checking on our membership status at CSIRO. I'm not sure whether we're an organizational member or if we've got individual memberships or whatever. I think we're a member of the Australian affiliate, but maybe not a member of HL7 International, which I think is slightly different and all this sort of thing. But I think now that we're getting into all this API stuff and, I think it's kind of going to be useful.
Yeah, certainly. I'll do the same. When is the FHIR normal FHIR meeting?
I think it's at the same time as this, but yesterday.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll check in, and then yeah, I'm curious. And you kind of read my mind. Can you go to this? If SDC is a sub project of FHIR, maybe this is a good model that we get our heads around and understand a little bit, and then yeah, I think that's the to-dos for you and me. I think is just to familiarize ourselves as much as possible with the procedures, how some of the other groups are operating. I generally attend the CPG CRMI calls weekly now at this point, so I get a little taste of it. But yeah, let's just become comfortable with them. But yeah, I think it's good to go. Obviously, Gino's been a super huge help, but we have other folks to lean on too if we need to. Not that I don't think Gino's going anywhere, but we have a couple of experts in this, so that we can use as resources.
Plus, I think there is like some, as much as I kind of hate to admit it, there is some value to the governance side of it because if as the group sort of goes through different phases of this, some people come in for a while, some people drop off, decisions are getting made, etc., etc. It's kind of nice to be able to have a process by which that gets done, or otherwise then it's kind of like, that's and I'm not saying that this would happen, but there's a potential for it to happen that decisions get made and people were not involved and they didn't agree with it or whatever, and and we've at least there's a process there by which that happens, and everyone knows that there's these meetings, you want to get involved in it, you got to go to the meetings, and that's where this happens and all the rest of it, because at the moment it's kind of a little bit loosey-goosey. And if you're kind of implementing and adopting the standard, which like a lot of people are now, they kind of want some sort of confidence in the process, not so much up to this point, but going forward as well, so that they understand how the standard is kind of changed from this point. So I think it's potentially positive from that point of view, but yes, it is going to be a little bit more overhead, but we'll see how we go.
See how it goes. I'm not. Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, there definitely is a global value. I think for the not just HL7 and FHIR, but like in general, the open standards process has a lot of value, particularly like commercial settings. That like people are different organizations are at kind of like a level playing field. there's specific rules. At least there's, this kind of open, I would, not everything is so open, right? And sort of collaborative in this way. So I get it. And yeah, I'm not overly concerned. I think we just have to get familiar with it. And it'll probably be an incremental increase, I think, in the work, but not some huge amount that, you and I can really shoulder that. I'll definitely shoulder as much of it as I
One
can.
interesting aspect to it might be that we get new or different people getting involved in it,
Mhm.
right? Which, I mean, it's a good thing that people want to get involved if we have exposure through a different channel, but they may be a different type of people than we normally get along, and that might be a challenge. So yeah, but I think if we don't engage with that community, we're kind of just deferring that, and I think we have to engage with that broader HL7 community at some point. And I think putting that off is probably not a great idea anyway. It's kind of just something we need to do. But if you look at how many people come along to these FHIR meetings, quite a lot.
Wow. I don't think we'll be doing that.
No, no.
We have more than 3 at this point. We're excited, right? No, but FHIR's big. It's called the FHIR. Can't think of the word I'm looking for. The FHIR ecosystem, but sort of whole enterprise FHIR. All right.
But
anything
yeah,
else?
well, yeah, like how much of this is actually formal and how much is not is what I still need to like get my head around. So like if we're just working on, say, on FHIR API, how much of that needs to happen? How much of that needs to be done in a formal setting? Like, and at what point? Like really until there's like a solid draft and that like it probably doesn't need to enter that process. So like I can imagine some of the things like that we talk about might be things that are suitable like in a formal meeting and some of them maybe not so much. So I've got to kind of get my head around like how that all works.
Yeah, same here. I think Gino touched upon it last time. I mean, my understanding is, it can be as informal as you like, essentially, as long as you adhere to some ground rules, and then the formality comes in the ballot process, right? You're saying like, I want to make this specific change, or like I have a question about X, or you know, there's an issue with Y, right? And then that that level needs to be resolved in a specific manner with a specific type of documentation surrounding it, right? So I think what he was talking about was like batching up the formality in some sense, right?
Yeah.
So that you kind of like
yeah, in my mind, we might have like, a ticket about the API or a ticket about the query resource, a ticket about the repeat directive or the rowing, like, at that level. And, a whole bunch of work might have gone towards already sort of ironing that all out in the months before that. But at the end of the day, it's like we have this pretty mature, pretty concrete thing. We write it in a ticket, and then that's what we agree that we're going to send through the process. And I feel like that is not too onerous.
Right. If we had to go through a really heavyweight process to essentially have those discussions, I would be like, okay, right. But I don't think that's the case. So, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go to FHIR next Monday, I think, and then, try and kind of absorb the kind of process a little bit. Or actually, I'm going to go to CRMI tomorrow, and then I don't want to go to too many more meetings, but keep the meetings low. But yeah, I think we'll get there, and we have the right guidance, obviously. So I don't think we have any issues. Plus, like, I don't know anybody who's terribly like has kind of like negative feelings about our work. Maybe they're out there, but or like a very different kind of conception. So that should also be helpful.
I've been to FHIR in person actually at the working group meetings that I've been to, but I haven't called in. So
Okay. Yeah. They can get a little spicy. I was in a couple of pretty spicy working group meetings over the Connectathon. It was mostly
okay.
terminology guys. They were.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Did you've worked on, just as an aside, John, you've worked on AutoServer, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
Michael, he called into the terminology ones. Not all the
mhm.
time, but most of the time, I think.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I mean I know you work on Pathlink a lot, but like how much you worked on AutoServer. We're
Yeah, fair bit.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and we're getting our heads around some terminology stuff, terminology work. So we're definitely it's a some of us have more experience with terminology than others, and I'm not a terminology expert. I don't think we really have a terminology. Brian is pretty good. Like I would consider him a terminology expert, but as a whole, like we're trying to work on various bits, different code systems, trying to understand them, start to work with them in a FHIR setting, and yeah, it's definitely it's. I know how challenging it is. Like some of the early stuff I did was on terminologies, but I'm definitely not a terminologist. But digging into kind of the state of the art when it comes to terminologies, that's why I went to those working group meetings. I was like, well, I'm gonna just try to absorb what's in the air here.
Yeah, I
Has
don't think
been
that's a
interesting.
great place to find out what, you know, the state of the art in working with terminology is, to be honest. That's not like I'm trying to throw shade or anything. But they're more like governance and stuff, right? Like they're talking about, oh, you know, what's going to be like a recognized external code system in the FHIR ecosystem, and how we're going to, what URI are we going to use, and all this sort of stuff. I don't think there's actually a lot of discussions going on there about like evolution of like the terminology, service API, and all that sort of stuff. Maybe a little bit, but like, for example, my boss, Michael, he's basically, you know, wrote the terminology service API along with Graham and that sort of stuff. And he's doing like, you know, what is like the next things in there, you know, like things like value set compose language and that sort of stuff, you know, which is like a new feature to the spec and all that sort of stuff. And so he's like the expert. And if so, I'm not sure exactly what you're working on. Like I gather it's kind of still in that quality measures space, right?
Yeah, it's coming soon, but yeah, it's as much as I can talk about it. Maybe we should stop the call now, actually, talk about it. So, all
Yeah,
right,
of course.
we'll stop recording.